if you are not willing to suffer, you will collapse back into your old habits, your old self, very, very fast. I'm always telling to myself, you have to deal with the pain. Okay, so should we go back to Israel and kind of call it a day and it was a failure, or should we try again?
Hello everybody, welcome back to Billionaire Best Friend, and joining us today is our guest Alon Michael. Alon is building the world's best platform like ever for the world of podcasts. It's like YouTube and ChatGPT integrated into one with even more features, which I would like Alon to talk about himself. But before that, just a little brief about who Alon is. He's originally from Israel but right now lives in Netherlands, is 37-year-old and married with 2 children. We're going to talk about his children as well and how the world of podcasts affect them. And he's been obsessed with reading ever since he was a child. And also the best thing is the way how we met is via Twitter, talking about Founders Podcast. He's been obsessed with listening to Founders Podcast for many years. So obsessed that he started his own podcast named Spice, and it's great. I really recommend you listen to it. It's on Spotify, and it's really great, very well researched, in-depth podcast. And later he pivoted to build his own podcasting platform because of the problems and opportunities which he saw in the world of podcast. Over to you, Alon.
Hey, Arpit, thank you very much for having me. Very nice to meet you. Yeah, I think it's the second time we're speaking and we actually never met or we never saw each other's face, so that's a good opportunity. Thank you for the introduction. So yeah, I think you've done well. I mean, again, I'm originally from Israel, 37 years old, was working in the tech industry for around 15 years. But even before that, and I think for me more interesting and more important than that, I was always obsessed with ideas, reading, with books specifically. And I always wanted to bring my own creation into the world, writing a book myself. And then I think the one thing that kind of got in the way of this is podcasts, which I believe is very interesting and a marvelous actually creation. If you think about it, and it took me some while to understand this, but we originally as human beings, we evolved around conversation, around sitting around the fire 10,000, 1 billion years ago, and listening to stories in human voice, seeing human responses, sitting one next to the other. And when we wanted to formalize conversation, ideas, and information, we created writing, the first scripts. And that kind of technology, very odd technology, is what allowed us to spread information through text. And in a way, we had the revolution of the print, and that kind of allowed us to spread this even more around 200 years ago. But the thing is, with our technology today, with podcasts, but even with broadcast even before, we kind of allowed ourselves to go back in time into the human conversation. And I believe podcast today is, and David Senra said it way before me, so all the credit goes to him, that podcasts are the printing press revolution for the voice, for the human voice. And I think this allows us for the first time to go back to how we were sitting around that campfire, listening to stories. And I always say books and texts are 2D and podcasts are 3D. They elevate another dimension, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, that is really great. I mean, I remember the first time we had this conversation, you told this thing that books are 2D and podcasts are 3D. I really thought about that, and it reminded me exactly of what David was saying. He said that podcasting is energy transmission. Yeah. I mean, when you're reading a book, you definitely imagine all the things that are happening, but it's not as deep as when a great host like David Senra is directly talking in your ears, and that energy is getting transmitted inside you. So, but I would really like to hear, what do you think about this? Podcasts are 3D versus books are 2D.
Yeah, 100%. So I definitely think, and I will forever think, that books are an amazing thing. And you can see the books behind me. I love reading. I still read a lot. And I believe that there is this kind of unique moment that you have with yourself while reading. It's a me experience. And you can go into, if you read a fantastic book like The Hobbit, for example, which I really love, you can imagine your own world, you create within your own mind ideas and worlds and characters and colors. It's an amazing experience to read a book. But at the same time, you can never get into the actual head of the creator. A book is kind of, once it's out there, it's yours, and the author is practically gone. A podcast or a broadcast or even a movie, you have this experience that you experience together with the creator, because they're right either in your ear or right in front of you if you watch the video, the clip, whatever it is, the MP4. And then you have the energy and the voice of the creator. You have their face, their facial expressions. And that is what elevates to the third dimension, which books can never do. You can never read Nietzsche and actually experience Nietzsche in your presence. And that's a shame to me, but it is what it is. And I think we are lucky to live in a world where you can listen. I just finished listening to David Senra's episode with Jimmy Iovine, and it's marvelous. Yeah, you listen to Jimmy Iovine in your ear, giving you all of these ideas. And this is something, just imagine what would have happened if you can have today's podcast with Steve Jobs, or with Nietzsche, or with Albert Einstein. This is the third, the 3D that we are missing today, that we missed back then.
Couldn't agree more, Alan. Couldn't agree more. I mean, it's exactly what David Rosenthal and Ben Gilbert from Acquired say all the time, that they are building conversational audiobooks. And the other thing that I've noticed is that you definitely come for listening for the story of Amazon or SpaceX or Meta, which are the popular stories, but then you do not go back to Acquired to listen to popular stories. You join because of the popular stories, but you stay with them because of the host themselves.
Yeah.
When I started listening to Founders Podcast, it was like I went for Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, but then David was talking about Brad Jacobs. I did not know who he was, but that's the beauty about podcasting. It's like, and David articulates this perfectly. You're building a podcast is not a media thing. It's not a media company. It is building relationships at scale. A podcast is a para-social relationship. And you, my friend, are building the world's best app, Spice, which I absolutely love for podcasts. So I would like to hear the why behind building Spice.
100%. And I think you introduced it yourself. In a way, I really believe that ideas can change the world. I really believe that. I think it sometimes sounds naive, but if you think about this, everything we touch today, the technology, the way our government works, the way our infrastructure works, everything around us was once an idea, followed with obsession. And I believe that we need to spread more of these ideas. Now, the gap that exists, to me, as someone who I think listens to around 10 hours of podcast a week for many years now, the gap that always exists is how do you transform this idea into a reality? And you know it yourself. I think, by the way, the one disadvantage podcasts have, or the way we consume them today, is we are transforming them into, in many cases, a white noise. So we put them in our ears, we then go to our Dyson and we vacuum the floor, we do the dishes, we go for a walk, and we like the experience of having these voices in our ears. Yeah, exactly. But as I think, and again, I think we discuss around David Senra a lot today, which is good. All the credits to him. He always says that podcast, like his podcast, is like a church for founders, for entrepreneurs, like something you need to listen to again and again and again. And I had, now go back to the why behind Spice, I had this experience of listening to something and then not necessarily know how to capture it. So you write it down in a private WhatsApp group with yourself, or you send it to a friend just to capture the moment and the idea, and you need to write it and then like rewind back the episode because you missed the point. And then we kind of progress into having transcript embedded within the podcast platform, which is good. But then I said, what if we can, with AI, with this amazing transformation of technology, what if we can embed AI within the listening experience? So that when I listen to something, I can ask a question, as if I would ask David Senra or the guests. What if I can ask Spice, which we now do, and I really enjoy this experience. I ask Spice to explain to me something, and then I ask it back, how can I apply it to my business or to my life? And this is a transformational experience because it does exactly what I wished it, and I'm so proud of this, honestly. It allows to capture the moment and transform it into a plan for embedding into reality. So I really, that's the why behind it.
I love the story behind the why behind building Spice. I mean, it's exactly like you are basically trying to solve this sentence, this problem that all of us, when we are young, we have that, okay, learning is memorizing information because that's the way our education system is made.
Yes,
But
100% it is.
right, and you are solving what David said, that learning is not memorizing information, it is changing your behavior. And your story reminds me so much of me. So I'm listening to the podcast, and whatever good thing that I'm finding, I'm writing it to myself on a WhatsApp group.
Yeah, yeah,
Then
that's me as well before Spice, 100%.
Since you told me during our first conversation that the initial inspiration actually came from listening to Founders podcast on the long evening walks, and that those maxims helped you a lot. So the first maxim that I want to talk with you, and it's one of the best maxims, is belief comes before ability. So when was that first moment when you believed that, okay, I can build this thing, I can compete with Spotify, YouTube, and ChatGPT?
Wow. So I really think it's the most important maxim for everyone, anyone building in a relationship, in any situation in life. It's so important to follow and to kind of hold strong to. And how it came to me, I think my entire life story, and I do want to say something before I jump into this. Spice is not yet a successful platform. I'm not yet a successful entrepreneur. I don't have this reflective saying, yeah, I've done it, and I can tell everyone that my story is successful, and you need to follow my advice. So don't. Verify it for yourself. And I'm not yet successful, and I'm working very hard towards that. Once I am, I'm going to have maybe a different voice in how I express this. But I still extremely believe in my own path and in this maxim. So back to my story, I think everything in me, leaving Israel for the first time, like I migrated from Israel to Italy, to Bologna. I lived in Italy for a few months with my wife, and then this kind of job didn't came out around, and I said, okay, should we go back to Israel and kind of call it a day, and it was a failure, or should we try again? And I had no ability to do the job I was applying to do, but then I got lucky and had this opportunity to move directly from Italy to Madrid. And we lived in Madrid for 6 years. Again, I was working in a job that I was not capable of originally doing. Not suited for the job, but I really believed in myself and in our ability to move. And then we decided after 6 amazing years in Madrid to migrate again to the Netherlands, working for Amazon, for AWS. And I had this notion of, you know what, I would figure it out. Bringing 2 kids abroad as an immigrant is difficult, it's challenging, but I was always having this feeling of I would figure it out. And when I listened in that evening walk to David Senra, and I think it was the Rockefeller, I'm almost sure it was the Rockefeller episode, I said, one of the many he had, I said, you know what? And this is something I really like listeners to contemplate on. And I think this is what changed everything for me. And maybe for you as well when you listened. When you listen, the good thing about Founders episodes is not only that David is so great in doing them, but the stories. When you listen to so many stories back one after the other, the one thing that comes, not that all of them are successful, which is amazing, but all of them failed a lot.
That's correct.
And all of them kind of stepped into something. Rockefeller, the greatest entrepreneur I think who ever lived, stepped into something that he was much bigger than him. And Henry Ford and James Dyson and Elon Musk is, everything he started almost failed, was on the brink of failure.
Exactly.
And when I had this understanding, I kind of, you know what? Failing is almost certain, but it doesn't matter.
Sure.
It doesn't matter because you success is kind of failure after failure. I think Churchill said it best. It's being successful is failing or experiencing a failure after failure without losing enthusiasm. I said, okay, let's do that. And then my belief comes definitely, or came before my ability, is I believe that I can do it because I can see it in my head. And that's, I think, the completing or the second part of understanding that failure is guaranteed. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't sentence you to death if you fail. The other half was, I can see Spice in my head. And I can see Spice becomes the best, the biggest platform in the world for people to consume content. I can see millions and millions of people using it, asking it questions, asking it how to apply these ideas into their own life and changing their lives and our world with my platform. And I said, okay, so if I can see it, I can make it happen.
Your belief reminds me exactly of what I've heard in Founders Podcast about Edwin Land. He's the founder of Polaroid, and instant cameras, instant photography were not a thing. The scientific ability just did not existed yet, but he believed in his mind that, oh, I could see the product as if it was just present as it is in front of me before the product ever existed. And your story reminds me of Michael Dell's story, the kid with $1,000 saying that I'm going to compete with IBM, the largest company in the world. And the thing that you told about failures reminds me of an interview that Jeff Bezos did back in 2018 or 19. He told that my body is full of scars, which was like a metaphor, which I paraphrased like, the bigger the empire, the more scars the body of the emperor has.
Nice.
And so failure is definitely going to come in the way, but that is where the second maxim comes in, that excellence is the capacity to take pain. And I would like to share a great story regarding this maxim. So, since we're talking about Indian entrepreneurs as well, the richest man in India right now is Mukesh Ambani. He's the second generation entrepreneur, son of Dhirubhai Ambani. And back in 1980s, what used to happen was there was no equity culture in India. So promoters had stakes in companies, but those were not liquid. So they would go to this guy named Manu Manek, and Manu Manek was the guy who was leading a bear cartel. He was outright evil person. He would make money two ways. So the first thing was the promoters would come to him. Okay, Manu, give me some cash because I want to buy up my own shares to increase its share price, right? So he would make money on interest by lending that money. And the second, which is the evil thing, since he knew, okay, the promoters lack liquidity, let me go out and short those exact shares.
Wow.
He tried to do this exact same thing to Dhirubhai Ambani. So Dhirubhai Ambani used 85% of net profit of the company just to keep the stock liquid.
Wow.
Sorry, just to keep the stock afloat. And if that scheme would have failed, there would be no Reliance today.
Wow.
Reliance is the largest company in India today, and his son is the richest man in the country. And this man was the embodiment of excellence, is the capacity to take pain. I know for sure that this is the maxim that you would love to talk about.
Yeah, 100%. Look, Isadore Sharp was the one who coined this maxim in his book, in his autobiography. He's the founder of Four Seasons. He's, I think, an amazing entrepreneur. The funny thing is, if you read the book, nobody speaks about it, but he says this maxim right after saying how good the cushions in the Four Season beds should be. And and then it's like, we are obsessed about the quality of the cushions and the sheets. Excellence is the capacity to take pain, which is really funny to me, speaking about cushions and sheets, comparing to the story you just told. I do want to say, before I jump into this, I really think Indian entrepreneurs should be much more talked about. And I think because of our Western culture, we focus a lot about the US. Obviously, every figure in the US is very big. I think it's a very beautiful thing that you're doing, promoting more Indian stories. I think it's very good. So the excellence is the capacity to take pain. Again, why I think it's so important. We live in a world, and I have two kids, and I can see this around me. I'm 37 years old. I'm kind of mature enough to see that we are nurturing a world in which suffering is not a good thing. We are trying to protect our kids too much. We're trying to protect people too much. Everything is politically incorrect to say, and so people are very careful not to hurt the other's feeling. We tell stories about everyone is equal and everyone can do everything I don't think this is entirely true. I
I
think
like your
we
thought
all are
process.
equal in the opportunities the world can give us, but we are not equal in the suffering we are willing to endure to get there.
Yeah,
And
that's
that brings me to excellence is the capacity to take pain. Building a business is suffering. Life is a struggle. Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, everyone who is really living experience that. Everything is difficult. Being successful is difficult. Having a successful marriage while raising kids is difficult. Migrating to another country to chase better opportunities is difficult. And if you are not willing to suffer, you would collapse back into your old habits, your old self, very, very fast. And by the way, we speak a lot about David Sandra. Let's speak about other podcasters. I think, for example, Dr. Andrew Huberman, who speaks a lot about changing the habits and health and fitness and how to improve yourself by X or Y different habits. Promoting these habits and adapting these habits to your life is also suffering. It's difficult to change. This is why James Clear's book is so successful, like Atomic Habits. You need to change your habits to become who you want to be.
Exactly.
And so bringing excellence into your life is net suffering. And the only thing that is kind of determined this is your ability to sustain and even accept this suffering, or even more than accept, welcome it. Because you know that at the end of the suffering, there is a better version of you, a better version of your company, a better version of your product. I'm obsessed, that you can ask my team, over every pixel in Spice. And it's still far from perfect for me, and I still want to improve it every day, and I'm getting so upset when they miss something, because I want the product to be absolutely perfect. And yeah, go ahead. I see that I can go for hours, so go ahead.
No, I like you. I like your thinking process. I can sense the energy.
Yeah.
Just last day I was thinking about this very thing, that a lot of investors, they think about okay, how great the company is, how great the industry is, how great the management is. And I was thinking to myself, okay, if there was a way to know that how the founder is, if there was a founder's podcast for the entrepreneur, for the startup entrepreneur, how great it would become for the investor to pick companies. Because what is Amazon? It is basically Jeff Bezos' personality at scale.
Yeah.
That's exactly the same thing with Apple. It is Steve Jobs' personality at scale, right? And I can sense your energy via this thing, and I get why you are so obsessed with building your product.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, I think going back to the idea of excellence as a capacity to take pain, if you look through all the history of entrepreneurship, and that could be, again, James Dyson, it could be Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, it could be Steve Jobs. Everyone loves Steve Jobs' story so much. Everything they miss all the time is the fact that he had an extremely bad period of 10 years trying to build Next after he was fired from his own company, kind of failing, honestly, failing with Next. Like, he was trying to build something that the market didn't want. He couldn't market it, he couldn't sell it, he couldn't really build it and promote it. Pixar was kind of struggling until they broke out with the first movie, Toy Story, if I'm not mistaken. And these 10 years are 10 years of struggle. And he could easily say, you know what, I have a lot of money. I think he sold every share of Apple he owned but one after he got fired.
What, like
And
$72 million?
Yeah, I think he had like $270 million. He could retire, but he said, I want excellence. I want excellence still. And then he said, okay, I have to endure this. I had to endure the entire process of pain. Read I think it's called Lift Up or something like that, the books of
Exactly.
Lift Off, yes, thank you. Elon Musk, or kind of SpaceX first years.
Yes.
Failure after failure, so much money spent, kind of everything. It feels like a bunch of amateurs having no idea how to build a company or launching kind of a process, and they figured it out. And I'm sure Elon Musk, you'd ask him, he got divorced during these years, Tesla almost got bankrupt, SpaceX almost failed after the third failed launch. That's just struggle and pain. But if you want to be successful at Elon Musk's scale or your own personal scale in your own life, you just have to expect and accept and invite suffering.
How are you applying this maxim to building Spice?
That's a very good question. I think, first of all, I'm again, every morning when I'm feeling sorry for myself, for this is so difficult to do, and it's not, but there are many things I cannot still figure out, and we don't have enough users as I wish we'd have, and the growth is not as I'm expecting. I'm always telling to myself, you have to deal with the pain. Don't avoid the pain. Welcome the pain and get closer to it. And so what do I mean by get closer to it is, there is something, I'm using the app like 5 hours a day because I'm listening through it to podcasts and I ask Spice everything. And if there is a small thing that doesn't work, and I just know, okay, I have to deal with that specific thing right now. So I'm pushing myself and the developers to understand every single pixel in interaction and user experience in the app. And this is a painful process because very natural response to everything is, let's delay this pain for tomorrow. We can deal with this pain tomorrow. This problem will stay here tomorrow. And I think dealing with the pain today, right now, obsessing over every pixel, that's the one thing I do. The second thing is, as a founder, and this is talked a lot today, so it's good, but as a founder, you are, especially in the early days, you are dealing with everything. Like writing up the contract of employment and marketing. I've never wrote a line of code in my life. I'm a non-technical solo founder. And I'm now using Cloud Card and Remotion to create the videos to promote Spice and thinking about the product vision for the next year and raising money and dealing with investors and with the family. So I think for me, it is painful. I hate it. Honestly, I do. But then at the same time, I'm welcoming it because I know me and the product and the company would become better for it.
I get it. I can understand your journey. It's the exact journey which every great entrepreneur has gone through. And they call it exactly like the entrepreneurial roller coaster of euphoria and terror. One day you're like, oh my God, I'm the best person in the world. This thing is going to become so big. And just the next day or even the next hour, it's like, oh my God, what have I done with myself?
What have I done? It's exactly so, it's so, I'll tell you something. I wanted to be an entrepreneur since I can remember myself. I never had the guts. I also never had a good idea or a good enough of idea, but I think it's a lie. I never had the guts. And I read about, all the greats. I read all the books, all the biographies. I know all the stories. But then again, I told myself, you want to be this person one day, but at the same time, you're always avoiding it. I was an employee for many companies, for startups, for big corporations, and I always knew I could do this, but I never had the guts. And now that I chose, I think 15 months already ago to found Spice, I said, you know what? I'm willingly going into the storm.
So you finally chose the version of you that you always wanted to be.
Yes.
It reminds me exactly like the early part of your journey of what Peter Thiel always used to say, that courage is in a far shorter supply than genius. And
100%.
So you had the genius, but you lacked the courage. That was a mistake, but it's fine. You are now the man in the arena. And with that, we'll talk about the third maxim, which you would really like, that only while sleeping, one makes no mistakes. Making mistakes is the privilege of the active, and that is your privilege right now. So let's talk about this maxim.
I think I'm far from genius, but thank you very much for that. And I do want to say something about the courage. I do not regret. There is one thing that is very important. You listen to all founders podcasts, and I'll get to the Ingvar Kamprard's maxim in a second, but you've listened to all founders episodes, you've read the books, and one thing that is very common to many of them, not to all, but to many of them, is that they get to the end of life with regret. That they weren't spending enough time with the family, taking care of their health, etc., having failed in many things other than the business. And I'm very lucky, and it's both luck but also decision. I invested a lot in myself and in my family, and so I believe I feel I have a very good, happy and complete life, private life, so that I can build Spice with a lot of support and a lot of power. And I actually don't envy those who are very lucky, and I'm pulling my hands to do a quote unquote kind of signal. I'm not envying those people who started very, very early. Everyone envy them, Mark Zuckerberg, et cetera, and we believe they got super lucky to start early, but they don't necessarily have the luck of the privilege to build their own private life in a good and mature way, and most of them suffer for that. Mark Zuckerberg actually seems like a very happy and balanced person, actually. So I just wanted to put this into perspective. So I do feel privileged for the years I've had to build myself and to become the man I am today.
That's
so
a great
back
way
to
think about
Ingvar Maxim, which I think is great. He is, Ingvar Kamprad, for anyone who doesn't know, he is the founder of IKEA.
Yeah.
He wrote this in his autobiography. Making mistake is the privilege of the active. And what does it mean? I think, and the other part is only while sleeping one makes no mistakes. And that's, by the way, the same thing as struggle. If you want to be out there, start a podcast, start a business, promote yourself to get a job. If you want to build your body with exercise. If you want to chase that girl or that boy, you are going to make mistakes. You're going to both fail, but also you're going to make stupid mistakes because you are inexperienced, because it's the first time, because you're trying out new things. Even if you are extremely established Rockefeller and you are expanding to international markets, you're going to make mistakes.
Yes, exactly.
And so if you, I don't remember if it was Jeff Bezos or someone else, there is this saying that if you are afraid from the heat, stay out of the kitchen. If you don't want to make mistakes, don't try. Don't even try. Don't try to innovate. Don't try to push forward. Don't try to be better. Don't try to chase that girl or that boy, because you are going to make mistakes. And making mistakes is the privilege of those who are trying.
Since you said that it's been a 15-month journey now building Spice, what mistakes do you think you've committed while building Spice, and how have those mistakes, made the product better?
Oh my God, the most. This is, I can go into rabbit hole, so just stop me whenever. But this is a great question. Actually, I've made every mistake in the book. And there is something here that is very important for me to say to everyone who is listening. I made the mistakes even after reading about other people making these mistakes, which sounds extremely stupid on my behalf. Charlie Munger always said the best way to learn is to learn from the stories and experiences of other people. Yes. If you want to live one life, live your own. If you want to live 1,000 lives, read books.
Exactly.
And what's funny to me, and I'm saying this, honestly and openly, I've made all the mistakes I read about, which to me, it's both very annoying and filled me with humility in a very good way. But yeah, I've made all the mistakes. So just to give you the origin of Spice, I was listening to that Founders Podcast episode on an evening walk, and I said, I really want not to ask a question. The original idea was, I really want to ask Spice to generate for me an episode on a single maxim.
Oh,
so I want to tell Spice, generate for me an episode on excellence is the capacity to take pain, and just collect all the best moments, founders, but could be My First Million, could be Lenny's podcast, could be Lex Friedman, could be Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss back in the day I was listening to a lot. Anyone who speaks about that, and collect these stories into an episode and just compile this for me. And I built it. And it worked. Yeah. And it was actually stunning. It was actually amazing. Yeah, you put a prompt, excellence is the capacity to take pain. Spice was generate for you 20 minutes episode just on this topic or maxim. It was beautiful.
Oh, I need to try this thing. I have not tried this thing yet.
Yeah, we removed it because nobody used it. Like, eventually what you learn, and this is again part of making mistakes, you can have a beautiful idea about a technology, and Paul Graham says this very beautifully, it's a solution looking for a problem. There happened to be that no one was asking the same question as I was, is how beautiful would it be to just prompt a podcast into existence?
But the other thing that Paul Graham also said, that it's better to have 100 users who absolutely love your product instead of 1 million users who just kind of like it. Which
I didn't have 10. So I didn't even have 10. So that I think the experience was, okay, this is nice, it is brilliant, but then, and since you are a podcaster and you are building your own kind of journey, which I think is beautiful, the interesting thing is, again, going back to making a mistake is a privilege of the active. I decided to pursue this, and I made the mistakes of thinking that if I have this need, or at least I think it's interesting, okay, I don't know how much of a need it was, it doesn't mean that other people want it, and it doesn't mean that it solves an actual problem. And so when I committed this mistake, one thing I've realized is, okay, let's walk backwards from the user experience and from the user pain, and what problem are we actually trying to solve? Do we want to build something that is cool and nice, or do we want to make users' lives better? Definitely, I want to make users' lives better. Okay, what are the challenges people have today with podcasts and with content at large? And I'm gonna rant you for 60 seconds, so bear with me. The interesting thing is there is too much content today.
It is.
Whenever we feel abundance, we become obese. Okay? That happens with food. We can see this in the West. It also happens with content. And we are content obese these days. Now, the one thing that follows all the time obesity is that we want curation. We want someone to create for us a diet so we know what to eat. We want someone to curate for us content diet so we know what to consume. And then I understood this. First of all, I realized this is the truth. And by the way, I really like taking stuff out of different worlds like obesity with food, and then understanding how it applies to content, etc., into information. And then what I understood is what people don't have time, because there's so much content. They always fear this form of fear of missing out, and they don't have time to listen to all the 3 hours podcast of all the creators they love. They just don't have time. Okay, so people want kind of curation. That's the one thing, getting the key pieces instantly. And this is why TikTok and Instagram and consuming podcasts, quote unquote, through Twitter is so good, because you just watch the short and you feel like you've watched the entire thing. So people kind of have this need for shorts and short kind of clickbait experiences. That's TikTok. The second thing people want is they really want, and it took me a while to understand this, people really want to do what me and you discussed earlier. They want to dive deeper if they feel something clicks. So what people started to try and do is copy-paste transcript into the WhatsApp group or bookmark specific moments, etc., etc. And I took these two worlds of, and you know what, this is actually very important for me to speak about. I think people will relate to this. In a way, we are consuming content with our phones. We are always shifting between two modes, the hunter and the scavenger. And I will explain what it means. The hunter is on TikTok, kind of just going one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. You are in a short kind of attention span environment. You are just looking for something.
Yes.
As if you are trying to find a solution to a problem. You're looking for something. You're always there, and you're actually not in a tranquil, a listening state. You just want dopamine. That's literally what TikTok is. It's a dopamine mechanism. But then there is the other state, which is going for a walk with your AirPods inside your ears. Then you are very tranquil. You are just in a listening state. You are consuming. Your blood pressure is very low. And you're not, hopefully not with your phone in front of your eyes. And these two states, once I realized them, I understood, okay, this is exactly what I need to build. I need to build a platform that in a single platform, you could experience both worlds. So the dopamine hits, okay, and the deep state listening. So the walking, the washing the dishes, etc., with your AirPods, you don't need the phone with you. And then I need to allow people to also dive extremely deep if they want.
Yes.
Between me founding Spice 15 months ago to understanding this, I've done every mistake possible, design mistakes, user experience mistakes. I spent a lot of money on very stupid stuff that were completely fruitless or unuseful for the product, just to realize something or to scratch my own itch, which I think, again, eventually is very important.
Yes, that is actually very, very correct. And I'm not only enjoying the journey that you're telling me about building Spice, but even the journey before building Spice, which you told, like we were discussing the Ingvar Kamprad's maxim, only while sleeping one makes no mistake. making mistakes is privilege of the active. But the thing that you said, that you have built a great private life, reminds me of something which Ingvar Kamprad said in his biography. So it goes something like this. I can't paraphrase it exactly. So it was something like, Ingvar regretted one thing at the end of his life, which was not spending a lot of time with his children.
Yeah.
And so the first line which got impressioned on my mind from Founders Podcast, and this was more than 3 years back, was that although Ingvar was trying to compensate for the lost time, anybody with children can tell you that childhood does not allow itself to be reconquered. And
Nice.
it was like somebody threw a stone on my face. It hit me so hard. Oh my God, this thing is so great.
Yeah.
And so
I think it was Yvonne Chenard. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Yvonne Chenard, the founder of Patagonia, who said, if I'm not mistaken, or it was Martin Scorsese. I'm not sure exactly in which book. I'll get it. It's I think either Martin. It's one of the producers who said childhood does not allow itself to be reconquered, and I definitely agree with that. I think having 2 kids, young kids, the one thing I always see is that, first of all, time definitely flies by. It flies very fast, but also I think as a founder, especially if you are following this thread of stories of the Elon Musks and Steve Jobs, the one thing you always fight with internally is the fact that you are obsessed. You have to be somewhat obsessed to be a founder. And you also struggle with the notion of sacrifice. Because you tell to yourself the story of, if I want to be successful like Steve Jobs, I have to sacrifice. And by the way, it is true. And then the question is, how can you balance as much as possible? I don't really believe in work-life balance. I don't believe in it at all, actually. I do believe that you have to have harmony, which is what Jeff Bezos was speaking about. But I think the struggle that a lot of founders, and myself included, have is, how do I manage both worlds of being a father, being my own self, where I want to take care of myself, my body, etc., and really obsess and spend so much time over a product and a company and being an entrepreneur. So I think this is definitely something that is difficult, but no one said it was easy, and I don't think you start this for the ease. You start it for it to be difficult, so I think it's part of the job.
yeah, I think we get the answer to this question can definitely be asked on Spice.
Yeah, definitely. You can go listen to a podcast, listen to these hardship stories, and just ask Spice to explain.
I remember the Ed Thorpe episode, which came more than 3-4 years back, which David told you used to be his personal blueprint. And Ed Thorpe is the most balanced billionaire that was covered on Founders Podcast.
Yeah. Very good recall. Yeah, 100%. It's a beautiful story. I remember Ed Thorpe was on Tim Ferriss, I think 5 or 6, maybe during COVID or before COVID time, maybe 2019. So man, like, could be 6 or 7 years ago. And I really recommend people to listen to it. You can find it on Spice, but anywhere you listen to podcasts, it's an amazing person, an amazing story.
I would recommend my audience absolutely to go watch the Ed Thorpe episode of Founders Podcast on Spice. And for those of you who don't know, Ed Thorpe was the first person to start a quantitative hedge fund. He's over 90, he's almost 90 years old, but looks like he's only 60 years old. And he has this saying that every hour spent in gym building my body is a day less spent at the hospital at the end of my life.
Yeah.
And then he was one of the earliest person to say that, to recognize Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway and say that, okay, this man is going to be the richest man in the world. And if I'm not wrong, he was also one of the first investors to invest in Ken Griffin's Citadel Securities.
Wow, that I didn't know.
If my recall serves me right, then I think all of these facts are great. I'd highly recommend you get Ed Thorpe in your mind. He is you would love him, and he's like one of the grandfathers that you never had. And I absolutely love that part where you talked about the world being content obese right now, and that you need curation. And this reminds me of the fourth maxim that we want to discuss, that is, in the age of infinite leverage, judgment is the most important skill. And
Yeah.
it remembers me exactly of Steve Jobs' judgment of taste. I mean, but before that, I would like to tell our audience about the four forms of leverage that Naval Ravikant told us that exist. There are two permission leverages, capital and labor. You need to ask some people for capital in order to deploy it. You need to you need some people to follow your orders in order to use the leverage of labor. But then almost 20-30 years back, two permissionless form of leverages became very prevalent. Coding. You could create an app, and millions of users can use it. Like Zuckerberg created Facebook, and there are almost 50% of the world is on Facebook today. And then the thing that we are building is media. David Sandra records the podcast. It takes him exactly the effort. The effort that is required is exactly if one person would listen to him or 100 million people would listen to him. So these are the form of leverages. And I mean curation. If you're talking about curation, Michael Dell listens to Founders podcast. Daniel Ek and Jensen Huang listens to Acquired podcast. Do you even need anybody else to listen to your podcast if these people are listening? That is curation. That is taste, and that is something that I believe Spice is trying to do with podcast. It is trying to be the GLP-1, said loosely, for podcasts.
That's a very nice way to put it. I would say, actually, let me go back just to Naval Ravikant just for a second. First of all, I think his book is an amazing book. I think this is kind of a curation of everything Naval ever said into one amazing book. Eric, who wrote it, done an amazing job. The preface is from Tim Ferriss. It's really an amazing book. I think you should read it. Actually, this line was not mentioned in the book, not in that specific form. He mentioned it on a Joe Rogan conversation. The Joe Rogan episode, I think 2015 or something like that, maybe 2019. An amazing conversation, actually. And Aval just just put everything he knows into that conversation with Joe Rogan, and you can ask Spicy, we'll find it for you. So just put this Maxim into Ask Spicy, it will find the clip. What I think about this, and you've done it, Pete, thank you very much for doing this beautiful kind of what are the forms of leverage. I think and Naval said actually two things. He said, today media and code are the best permissionless kind form of leverage that you have. So you start a podcast, you start it yourself, and you can, without a lot of help and investment, or maybe even just on your own without any investment, but 2-3 subscriptions, you can reach infinite amount of people. You put your podcast, you upload the MP4 file into a platform, and potentially 8 billion people can watch it. That's infinite amount of leverage. Now, the other part of the Maxim is the most important thing now is judgment. What does it mean? And that's extremely important. When you make mistakes, and it's beautiful how everything connects. I love this. When you make mistakes, you start to understand that you've made a wrong judgment on something. It's not a bad thing, but nevertheless, you wanted to turn right, and you should have actually turned left. Okay, now you're doing enough of these mistakes, and what is happening eventually is that you are building a form of judgment that is based on what you've read, what you've watched, what you consume, but mostly on your own experience. And now, in the age of infinite leverage, when one host or one guest can change your entire podcast, or one line of code or one product decision can change your entire future of your company, then judgment is extremely important. And now I will connect it to what everyone on Twitter is saying today, but everyone kind of online is, we are in the age of the idea man. Today, the idea man is the absolute, and by the way, I think the purest form of entrepreneur today, not necessarily the most successful, the biggest, the richest, but the purest form of an entrepreneur today is a podcaster and the vibe kind of coder. Not necessarily need to vibe code. They can code with actual writing the code, like Peter Levels. Peter Levels from Twitter is a solo entrepreneur, never raised money. He is actually living the permissionless life. It doesn't need to, even Mark Zuckerberg, who built Facebook, eventually needed to ask permission for money, to raise money from VCs. And then that's permission-bound experiences. And many of the founded companies today, the most successful ones, are bound by the money of the VCs, the boards, the shareholder, etc. And Peter Levels is this kind of purest form of entrepreneurship. Now, I'll just finish this point on Naval's phrase or maxim is, if you understand, if you realize, and I realized this only 2 years ago, when you realize that you want to put yourself in permissionless environments, permissionless businesses, and permissionless experiences, then you understand, okay, how do I make my judgment stronger, better, faster? And that's through experiences and reading and consuming. Now, I will connect this back to the obesity of information and what Spice tries to do. I don't want to choose, and I don't want Spice to choose for anyone what to listen to. I want a completely permissionless world. Like people can listen to anything they want, and they should try, have a taste from everything. But then, yes. and I think this happens naturally to many people, they kind of fall into, or rise into rather, specific creators that they like their style, whatever they listen to. Some people really like to have rants, the Joe Rogan rants in their ear for 3 hours, in their ears for 3 hours. Some people want the like very executed, well executed founders kind of thing. But by the way, David Senra is curating a full biography into 45 minutes of an episode. That's curation, and he is, I think, the best one doing it ever. Acquired are curating a full history of a company's story into a 2.5 hours conversation. That's curation. Now, what I want Spice to do, I want your experience consuming this knowledge to be supported by AI, so you can have infinite leverage over the content you're listening to, while also having the key moments personalized for you always there. So you can kind of curate the things, because sometimes you don't have time to listen to everything. And I want Spice to curate the key moments for you, while always focusing on what Spice believes. By the way, we are not using algorithms here, we are using AI. AI in Spice is choosing which key moments it believes will suit you best based on what you tell Spice you want and interested in. So that's how we leverage curation, but I would never want to limit what people can consume.
That's a really great description of this maxim that you just gave right now. And the two podcasters that you talked about, Acquired and Founders, are the perfect examples for our next maxim, which is, in the long term, you're only as good as your consistency. I mean, this definitely originates from Shane Parrish, and I watched your entire episode on this maxim to make an episode for my podcast, which I'm going to be releasing today. And it's exactly this thing, that in the long term, you're only as good as your consistency, or as how David puts it, same thing but different language. That is, ordinary things done with extraordinary effort over extraordinary amount of time. And the best example for this, you will not believe, this man focused on a singular idea his entire life. His name is Sanjeev Bikhchandani, by the way. He founded a company called Info Edge, right? And it's a classifieds business, just classifieds. Started with job listings via Naukri.com, which translates into jobs.com. It's a Hindi word for jobs. Then went into matrimonial listings via Jeevansathi.com, which translates into lifepartner.com. And then for real estate, started 99acres.com. And just like that, he started almost 10 plus different portals, which are solely classified portals. Built a $10 billion empire.
Wow.
His holding company is valued at almost $10 billion. And it is just a collection of different portals doing classifieds. And then when his company became a big cash cow and he started investing into startups, he said, I am not going to do it like other venture capitalists. Ev- the companies that he invested in are also classifieds business.
Wow.
So
And a
his
simple
most
idea, right? That's another maxim.
yeah, his most successful investment is a company named Eternal. Right? It started as Zomato and he invested when it was doing hardly $1,000 a month in revenue. He personally emailed the founder of the company and gave him $1 million
Wow.
for like a third
I
of the
love these
company.
stories.
Right. And over time invested around $20 million. That stake today is valued at $4 billion plus.
Crazy.
And that company Eternal is valued at $30 billion.
That once you find the compounding effect, just don't interrupt and don't get it in its way. And yeah, look, I'm very happy that by the way, the format of this conversation, I really like it because it's kind of, and of course I'm biased here, I chose these maxims because I really believe that if you collect or kind of use them, try to use these 5 maxims that we mentioned throughout your life, you're going to be successful, no matter what. I really believe in this. And this maxim from Shane Parrish in its complete form is, in the short term, you're only good as your intensity, but in the long term, you're only as good as your consistency. What it tries to tell us, and I think it's beautiful, Shane Parrish is just brilliant for phrasing this, is what this tries to tell us is, if you want to run a marathon, you cannot sprint throughout. You just can't. You'll get out of breath, your muscles will cramp, eventually you will fail. But if you definitely want to have a 400 meters sprint, go ahead. Enjoy the sprint, like push as far as you can, but this will not take you far. And so what I believe entrepreneurship is, and life really is about being able to push extremely hard in a pace that you can sustain for a very, very long time.
That's
So
correct.
I think Steve Jobs or James Dyson suffered more. Okay, and people may roast me here, but I think they suffered more intensively than Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett in investments is more of a interlooking or kind of contemplating a lot and making one very, very good decision once a year.
Yes.
Okay, but entrepreneurship is more of sprinting throughout your life. It's very, very difficult to do because you have to make a
Yes,
lot of
exactly.
decisions every day. You're suffering. Everything is pushing against you, and it's very, 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 very difficult to do. And I think what in entrepreneurship, in investing, I think, by the way, Monish Pabrai, whom I love, and Warren Buffett, and the most successful investors in history, Charlie Munger, of course,
Um,
they act. Go ahead.
just one thing that I would like to I'm sorry to interrupt, but just
No,
one
no,
thing
don't.
that I would add is Warren Buffett has a 60-year investment career, and majority of Berkshire's returns came only from 12 investing decisions. So it was like
Exactly, and it's
one great
incredible.
decision in 5 years.
And it's incredible. And Monish Pabrai, again, I really like his ideas and his book. What I'm trying to explain here, and maybe it's important to clarify what is the point here that I'm trying to make. The point is, we are studying investors, and in the investment world, having the experience of relaxed, contemplative, thoughtful, easy person like Charlie Munger, like Monish Pabrai, who seem to they seem to us as like the philosophers, right? Very smart, very very Zen-like, and the entrepreneurs are like a roller coaster train. Now, why I'm bringing this point back to Shane Parrish's phrase is, I think it's very important to understand that even if you are riding a roller coaster, you have to find a way to ride it for a very, very long time.
That's correct.
Steve Jobs said it beautifully. In our industry, he said, winning is spelled survival.
Exactly.
That means you have to sustain yourself mentally and your business for a very long time. And when I try to apply this maxim to my life, is in the long term, okay, I want to have a 20 years long-term perspective on Spice and on my career. The
Yes.
only thing that matters is consistency. So let's keep at it every day consistently for a very long time. That's the point of the phrase.
That's great. That's a really great description of the maxim. And
Thank you.
along with this, we are done with the 5 maxims. But apart from the maxims, there are few questions that I really wanted to ask you out of curiosity. What's your autotelic thing?
So autotelic, that if I remember correctly, it's an action that kind of serves itself. There is no outcome.
Yes.
Okay, perfect, good. I have good memory still. For me, there are a few actually. For many years, I think I'm 37, so for 15 years now, I wake up at 6 a.m. and I exercise every morning. Of course, there is an outcome that I want, but it's not to look better. I think that will never happen, and I'm married already, so I don't care as much on this. But it's more, I just believe this sustains everything in me. Is waking up very early, have the first 2 hours of the day for myself, and exercise, and actually suffer physically at the first part of the day, so that I am reminded that suffering is okay, and I can overcome even this exercise, like the one that I don't want to do today because it's too hard. That's one of the autotelic things. The second thing, I really think now is just creation. I think creating, it could be creating spice, it could be writing an article, it could be just, the one thing I recommend everyone to do, wake up early and exercise. But the second thing is create something every week. Express yourself to the world, put yourself out there every week in a way that is autotelic, meaning there is no outcome that you're expecting from this. You don't want likes on Twitter for the article. You don't want to publish that book. You don't necessarily want to, but you just need to express yourself. I think we've been created into this world, human beings, to express ourselves and create something, to make the world a bit better every day. And I think the act of creation, read Rick Rubin's book, it's amazing. The act of creation is just a very autotelic thing that we need to do without expecting an outcome.
I loved your answer. It's so connected to, it's so connected to Ed Thorpe's journey as well.
I wish it
Right?
upon myself to have Ed Thorpe journey.
Sure, sure. I wish that upon you as well.
Thank you very much.
I have almost 60 plus apps on my iPhone, and Spice is among the top 5 apps that
Thank
I've
you.
been using right now.
Man,
It's
this
such
means
a
a lot.
great, yeah, it's such a great product that just the first time I saw Spice, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I would have built if I was a technical person, right?
So look, I'm not a technical person. I'm very happy and proud that I pushed myself to find the right people to work with. I must say here something that is very important for me to say. I have an incredible team. And actually, now all of them, we started, I think, more diversely, but now all of them are Indian, either from India or from the United States. And I'm very lucky to work with people who've connected to my vision and who understood what I'm trying to create and are capable, much more capable than I am, especially technically, to bring this into the world. And so, yeah, I was just like you. What would be the one thing I would build if I could? And then I said, okay, I cannot. But if I can work together with people who can, maybe we can do it together. I'm very lucky to found them.
You know, this thing reminds me of this documentary that was made on WeWork. Have you seen it? It's called
Yeah, of
WeWork
course. We crash, right, I think?
on Apple, right? So there's a scene where they're telling, there's a scene where Professor Scott Galloway is interviewing Adam Newman, and although that journey went in a different direction, but what Scott Galloway said it there was, listen, man, I did not understand anything what you said, but I really wish I would have said this before.
Yeah. He
And
is,
so,
he is a great marketer, Adam Newman.
yeah, with this, I would like to ask you this connected question, that why I feel Spice is so great. It because it's like an integration of every single thing that you can think around podcast. So like YouTube changed how we learn visually. ChatGPT changed how we interact with information. Why does merging them for podcast unlock something which neither of these apps does alone?
Oh, beautiful question. Look, I realized, and this goes back, I think you're also gonna like, probably you know it, Jeff Bezos always, not always, he was asked, I think in one interview many years ago, maybe 15 years or 10 years ago, and he was asked, like, how do you look for innovation? Like, how do you know to predict the future? And he's like, no, it's not what you should do. Don't try to predict the future. No one can. Instead, try to understand what won't change.
Yeah.
What won't change 10 years from now? And he said, on Amazon, he said, what won't change is our customers will always, 10 years from now as well, would want lower prices and faster delivery. So that's what I'm focusing on. And now to Spice, when I, by the way, listened to a founder's podcast on this and then read the book, I read this and I said, okay, what won't change in the relationship to what both of the things you said? And you phrased it beautifully, Arpi. Thank you. So I can now bring it home with this. I understood. We are going to communicate 10x, 100x more with AI every day. With voice, with text, we are going to chat and consume and interact with AI way more. That's not going to change in the future, only increased. The second thing that is not going to change, and we can see that, is short form video, but video at large. YouTube allowed everyone to tube, to broadcast themselves, okay? Tube themselves to the world. And now it shifted, TikTok, Instagram, etc. It shifted into short form as well, and I think short form is definitely the strongest thing now. What I understood is, first of all, if a human being, my customer, my user, my friend, myself, would spend 10x, 100x more time speaking with AI, and 10x more time consuming video, then having these two together in one platform is very, very interesting thing to do. And that's exactly why Spice is what Spice is today. By the way, it wasn't my original idea, as I said. Like, it took me a lot of mistakes to realize this, but eventually I said, wait, people speak with ChatGPT, and they actually have conversations, like voice conversation. They find a therapeutic experience in having a conversation with AI. Okay, that's beautiful. And we consume so much content, bring them together into one environment where you can both consume and then interact with AI on the content you just consume. That's magic. So that was the idea to me.
Yeah, that's a great way to put the idea for Spice. It also reminded me of a clip which is very popular. It's a Steve Jobs clip where he's telling that in the future, certain products will exist where you could talk with Napoleon Bonaparte, or you could talk with any great person who existed before you would want to talk with. But then the problem which I came across while asking the questions, let's say I wanted to talk with Steve Jobs, right? So I'm telling ChatGPT, okay, you are Steve Jobs. What would Steve think about this? But the thing is, it comes back with a vague answer.
Yeah.
But then, how Spice is so different over here, according to how I use it, is because everything, like this is personally according to my usage, it's my context. I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship, so I asked Spice questions about entrepreneurship. What would Steve think about this, right? And because it has all the directory of Founders Podcast and Acquired and all the other great podcasts that people have uploaded on Spice, it knows the specifics and does not come back with vague answer. If I
100%.
ask a great specific question, it is going to give me a great specific answer.
I love that, and I'm very happy you noticed this and you have this experience. Look, for me, and it's funny, as someone who's building in the AI industry, I really believe in humans. I really believe in the human experience, and I honestly don't think we are ever going to replace the human experience with an AI experience. I honestly don't believe that. And this is why, by the way, podcasts are so successful. And I will give you the best example in the world. Try to take any of the podcasts you love the most, especially the ones with guests, and download the transcription and put it to Notebook LM, which is the one that creates an AI conversation between two different voices. Yeah. You would never have the same experience as listening to Ari Emanuel on Invest Like the Best. By the way, I extremely suggest this episode. I think one of the best episodes of 2025, Ari Emanuel on Invest Like the Best with Patrick O'Shaughnessy. Try to put this into Notebook LM or any other AI voice platform like 11 apps. It would be boring because it's not the person. It's not, as I said, like podcasts are a 3D experience because of the human being, because of the story. And we human are crafted by nature, by God, by whomever created us. We are crafted to care deeply about other humans. Sam Altman said it, I think, on a podcast last year. I think it was A16Z podcast. And that's exactly, I think, why podcasts are so very beautiful. Now, why I'm saying all of this is when you communicate with Spice, yes, it is AI that is crafting the answers, but it is crafting the answers based on and supported by clips from the original conversation, so that you're always directed back to someone and something which was actually said, and you can watch and listen to them saying it with the context, which is what for me is magic.
Yes, that's exactly correct. And I'm sure that across our 1 hour, 10-minute conversation, we have talked a lot about the many features that Spice have. But the one question that I want to ask you is 5 years from now, what's the thing that Spice users will say they can't believe they ever lived without?
Wow, that's a very good question. Look, there are two things that I see. If you'll ask me about just one, I think it will be how to transform what I'm listening to how I live my life. That's, I think, the most important mission of Spice, is helping you transform ideas to reality.
Yeah.
And this could be you're listening to Andrew Huberman speaking about the circadian system or rhythm, and you understand that you need to wake up earlier, but you don't know how to do that. Like, it's difficult for you. And you ask Spice, based on Andrew Huberman's expert guests, please build me a 30 days plan to change my life and improve my circadian rhythm and wake up earlier. And I needed to do it with my context. So you need to know me. You need to know that I like to wake up at 1 p.m. Afternoon, and I am this and that. And Spice knows you. It has all the context on you, and it knows exactly how to base this answer based on Andrew Huberman's expert guests. That is something I believe people won't be able to live without. And same for Founders Podcast, and same for any Elon Musk on Joe Rogan saying how he built SpaceX. And you say, okay, based on what Elon Musk told to Joe Rogan, build me a plan to start a company in 30 days. And this is something that I think is transformational. I really believe it's transformational.
That's a great answer. While you were telling this answer that how this feature would be so transformational, I was thinking of my own personal journey, and this very quote that learning is not memorizing information,
Yep.
it is changing your behavior. Because as a new reader, an avid reader, we're like, oh, I'm reading about all these great entrepreneurs, so I'm going to be an entrepreneur myself one day. And so what you're doing right now is separating the wants from the action part. You don't
That's
just hold
exactly the point. Yeah, and the phrase that you gave, I actually don't know the origin. Learning is not memorizing information, it's changing your behavior. David Senra is saying this a lot. This is, if you would ask me, Alon, what's the tagline of Spice? This should be the tagline. This should be how I introduce Spice to the world. And look, once we are launching the product into the stratosphere, I don't want ever to stop with podcasts. Spice should have audiobooks. It should have books, because you need to read a book and do the exact same thing. Because in the moment, like, I want to say something here that is very close to my heart. The idea, the notion of serendipity. Serendipity is something that you cannot copy, you cannot recreate, you cannot artificially produce. It is something magical. It is really something magical. And why I'm saying that is because serendipity is you, Arpit, reading the same book that I read at the same time, but getting like deep connection into different parts because of your life story, because of where you are in your life. And you need to have AI that supports you in that moment where you are reading something beautiful, and with one tap or even just one voice command, you say, hey, I love this idea from Ed Thorpe. How can I apply it to my life? Please explain it to me. Or you find something that is difficult for you to understand, that Elon Musk said in his autobiography that was just recently published last year, I think. It's not autobiography, but it's a biography based on him. And you're like, it sounds to me very difficult to understand, to comprehend. Can you find this theme being repeated with other very successful founders. And Spice does exactly the same. It connects all of these very intimate stories of what we're doing it right now, what Founders is doing, what David Senra is doing, is trying to connect, to curate for you just based on your experience in that moment. So for me, the idea is I want to expand Spice to every human experience with content, because that is where the magic is, and I want this magic to be exactly that, to transform ideas into reality.
That is actually a very great idea, to expand it into different forms of content, because short podcasts are great, but we are obsessed with it. But there will be another audience who will be obsessed with other forms of content.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I really believe there is infinite amount of opportunity here. And this is exactly why I'm so excited about this. And I think, in a way, some people would say, hey, I don't want AI to interrupt in every experience of my life. And I understand that. I definitely understand that. And this is why, by the way, people suggested to me when we started to build Spice as a ChatGPT with links to the content. And I said, no. It must be the opposite. It must live with the content. And you as the user, as the listener, you must decide if you want to activate it here and now or not. And this is why I'm so proud about this decision, is we invested a lot in, first of all, getting videos, which is a very expensive thing to do. If you think about compute, just processing all of these videos into clips and into this and transcribing all of this and then putting AI to sit on top of the transcription. All of this stuff is a very expensive thing to do. But we understood, or at least I had this notion, and I hope I'm correct, that you would want to have this living with you in the moment. And some people would decide to use it. Some people would decide not to, but nevertheless, it's always there for you. Unlike anything else that you're listening to or watching a movie on Netflix, and then you need to go and check something on Google or on ChatGPT. You see it, and you ask your wife, hey, where is this place? Or is it true? Where did they film this scene? Because it's beautiful. And you open your phone, and the entire experience of the movie is gone because you're now disconnected. Instead of watching this movie and just ask Spice, hey, where did they film this shot? It's really beautiful. And Spice just answers because it lives with you in the moment. It has the context of your life. And this is infinite, I think.
The last question that I would want to ask you is a relatively personal question. And I came up with this question with the intent of getting you to think even deeper about Spice and its purpose in the world. So, your kids are growing up in a world where they can ask any podcast anything, especially now that Spice exists. How does this change what knowledge even means for them?
Oh, beautiful. So actually, you're asking this with the perfect timing. We just finished listening to the first podcast my kids listen to, like a kids podcast. It's beautiful. It's about music. Actually, an amazing podcast, I must admit. And it's in Hebrew. So it's like a podcast from Israel for kids by the Philharmonic music group in Israel. It's really beautiful. And I think the experience that people will have with knowledge, and I don't think it actually changes from what it has with the internet and ChatGPT and podcasts. And I will explain. I encourage my kids to speak with ChatGPT or with Gemini or with any other LLM. First of all, as long as I'm there physically, just to moderate and to make sure it's okay. And they don't dive deeper into places I don't want them to steer. They're still very young. But I encourage them because I think what kids have that many of us lose later in life, they have infinite curiosity and infinite patience to go through the rabbit holes of their curiosity, which is what older people are just kind of getting tired. You don't have enough. I'm actually interested to know what this means, but never mind. Maybe later. Kids don't have that. Kids live in the moment. And when they have an idea in their head, they really want to dive deep right now. And I think AI allows this. The internet allowed it also, but it was still difficult. You look for something in Google, and then you have a lot of results. And if you are 7 years old, you don't necessarily know what to do. When you are a 7-year-old speaking with ChatGPT, you just ask, hey, chat, what does this mean? And it gives you the answer, and it suggests you follow-up answers. or questions. So I think for kids growing up in this age could have amazing experience of infinite knowledge, literally ready in your fingertips or in the tip of your lips. You just say the word and it's there. And I think I actually support it. I really believe it's beautiful. I don't know why a lot of people think we need to go back to the time where you can only have books, etc., etc. I think now you want to be an engineer at 12 years old, you just start asking questions, and the AI will help you to understand how to form a plan to become an engineer. That's it. It's beautiful, I think.
Your answer, your answer to this question was just so great. It reminded me of the introduction to Jeff Bezos's book, which was written by Brad Stone, right? Do you remember the part where Jeff was introduced with a pseudonym to protect his identity when he was a child, because he was like a super genius child.
Really? No, remind me.
You don't remember this thing?
No, I don't. I can't.
Yeah,
Jeff
okay.
Bezos, no, I don't.
So in the first book, in the first book which Brad Stone wrote about Jeff Bezos, right? Jeff Bezos, when he was a child, he was like a super genius kid, would read about lots of things, would build lots of science projects which got selected for the state fair as well. And so there was a special program for special kids going on in the state where Jeff used to live. And there was an author who wanted to write about this special program, and that author, she contacted the administration of the school, right? Okay, you are running a special program for these special kids. Who is the person that I should talk to? And they said, okay, Jeff Bezos is the boy that you should talk to.
Nice.
Right? And the entire reason that I wanted to talk about this thing was Jeff has this quote that you don't choose your passions, your passion chooses you.
Choose you, yeah.
Or other way to put this is, people don't have ideas, ideas have people.
100%.
You get obsessed with the thing and then you just cannot get that thing out of your mind. So what becomes important is getting exposed to certain things.
Yeah.
Right? Like Jeff Bezos used to read a lot about entrepreneurs, and so he wanted to become an entrepreneur for himself. My journey, although I'm only at the starting point of it, it starts with Michael Dell. In 12th standard, there was a chapter named A $2 Billion Dream in our English textbook, which was the story of Michael Dell. From where I got obsessed that, okay, there's something known as $1 billion. I want to try to achieve it.
Yeah.
It does not matter if
This
I
is
make it or
beautiful.
not.
This is beautiful, and it's exactly it. And you know, Paul Graham has this. He writes these essays. I don't know if you read them. And in one of the essays Paul Graham wrote, it's called "How to Do Great Work," if I'm not mistaken. And in it, he writes something that really stuck with me: is if you are curious, you are not astray. If you are curious, you are not astray. Meaning, if you find something interesting, pursue it. If it interests you, if you're curious about it, it must be for a reason. Either this idea is chasing you or you are chasing the idea. It doesn't matter. If you're curious, you are not astray. And this is going back to my kids, is if my kid has a question, it's that pursue that question. It interests you for a reason. If you're interested with Lego or with building blocks or whatever it is, when you're curious trying to do something, you have to pursue this curiosity. And AI, I really believe, allows us to pursue this curiosity in a way that we could never do before. So I think it's beautiful, and I think podcasts leveraging AI, or rather you leveraging AI while experiencing a podcast, is exactly that. Is you're listening to something, and in the serendipity of that moment, that thing struck you. Like that episode I listened to on an evening walk that brought me to the idea of building Spice. This is something you have to act upon immediately. And Spice just makes it extremely easy to do.